So Tiger's Jaw's sixth album, I Won't Care How You Remember Me, will be released March 5th. And Ben Walsh from Tiger's Jaw with us. So I've only heard the songs that have been released so far, but even just like among those songs, to me, it sounds like there's some sort of common thread running through here. Am I just making that up, or does this album have some sort of like unifying theme or something?
I think that thematically, the whole record is pretty well connected. Mike, I'm sorry, my internet's saying unstable connection.
You still sound fine. Let's see what happens.
All right. Okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, lyrically, thematically, the whole record is pretty connected. And then sonically as well, like we approached the record, in a very deliberate way where we wanted to capture sort of like the live energy of us when we're playing shows. So we approached it not wanting to do a whole lot of like sonic layering of tracks. We wanted it to be pretty true to like the arrangement of how we would be performing it live. We also, this record more than any of our other records in the past have we had the more of the luxury of time in terms of like writing and demoing stuff out and reworking things. So we really had a lot of time to kind of like refine everything and make sure everything felt really good. So I think just by virtue of all that time spent together, it sort of locked everything in. So even if the songs, have like a different feel to them or a different type of energy, there's still something cohesive that kind of goes through the whole record.
Okay. And one thing that's different on this one is, since your last one, you guys announced that, Teddy Roberts and Colin Gorman are now, full-fledged members of Tiger's Jaw.
Mm-hmm.
And they've contributed to this, album. So, I mean, for, a couple albums ago, I guess Brianna started becoming more of a contributing writer. And then now, it's four of you. So what did that kind of, just that dynamic, how did that change the dynamic of the writing of this album? And what did those two gentlemen kind of maybe bring to this album that maybe wouldn't have been there, otherwise, if they were just brought in just to play their parts rather than write?
Right. Well, so the two of them have been playing, in our live band for, going on 6 years now. So we've had a lot of time spent on tour together, and a lot of time, getting to know each other personally and as musicians and everything. So, there's like a real sort of like family feeling between all of us. And in terms of the writing, it was a no-brainer. Like we did spin in a different sort of way. It was just myself and Brianna, but when it came time to start figuring out, what to do next, in the same way, it was like, all right, this is a no-brainer. We gotta do this record together. And I think the way that it changed the songwriting and demoing process, specifically for me, was that I was able to bring demos and stuff to the rest of the band kind of at an earlier stage as like than compared to in previous records. Like I would be pretty maybe a little overly cautious about sharing things until I felt like they were totally done. But the sort of like musical trust that we have among the group, I trust that they know me as a songwriter and they can see like kind of like the vision of where an idea could end up, rather than like me having to feel like I figured it all out before I show it to anybody else. So it was a lot more collaborative from an earlier point in the songwriting process for this record.
Were you guys able to work together on the actual recording, or did you do that, separately and remotely?
So we actually recorded in a pre-pandemic world. So we started the writing process in early 2019, and we would get together for a couple of days every month for the first 6 months of the year. And then we got into the studio with Will Yip and spent 6 days a week, 10-hour days in the studio for 5 weeks straight. So it was, a whole lot of time together. And, like I said, it was pre-pandemic. So the whole thing was done, and we were getting mixes back in early 2020 when all the news started to break So it didn't really impact the recording process. It just impacted like the release strategy, and it
Yeah.
was just not how we were expecting to release the record. But we've had to make do and become creative in other sort of ways now that touring is sort of out of the equation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you guys have been working closely with Will Yip for a while. I remember seeing you play at a studio in Conshohocken. It was just like a one-off acoustic thing that you guys recorded and released, with Anthony Green, I think, was the other act,
Yeah.
right? So that's like probably
Right.
close to 10 years ago. So what I mean, Will's his resume like speaks for itself. We don't need to go through that. But how,
Mhm.
from when you first worked with him and maybe didn't know him as well to like now, how has that relationship changed? And like and what like how does he kind of what kind of role does he play? Some producers are
Sure.
just like knob turners, some are like another member of the band. Where does he kind
Yeah.
of fall on that spectrum?
Well, I've been lucky enough to work with him on a professional level, and I'm also lucky enough to call him one of my closest friends at this point. So, we spend a lot of time together, either working on music or just like hanging out. So I think, sort of in the same way I've developed this close relationship and trust with my bandmates, I have that also with Will. So I think our relationship in terms of producing and making records, it's changed because we're just more comfortable with one another, and like he can, especially with this record, he challenged me a whole lot more. Like I would show him an idea, or we would be working on pre-production, and he would like listen really, really critically, and he knows me really well as a songwriter. He does sort of assume that like extra member of the band position when he's producing with a band. Like he really thinks in terms of not what he would do personally, but what he would do personally if he was a member of the band.
Right.
He really like gets himself, like it's like method acting or something like that. Like he really puts himself into that position. So this time around, we've done a couple of records together. He really would push me. Like some songs I would show him, and I'd be like, I think this one's like pretty good. I think this one's pretty done. And he's like, yeah, I think you're almost there, but like I think you could totally redo this whole chorus or something like that. And at first I was like, whoa, like I don't know about that. And but that kind of trust that we have for each other, and that respect for each other, like allows us to kind of push each other in those creative ways.
Have you, having been around him and seeing how he does this, has that, have you any interest in doing what he does a little bit, being on the other side of that relationship and working with other artists and trying to, polish and do some production and like project management, whatever you call what he does?
Sure. I haven't given it too much thought. I'm more of like a logistical behind the scenes sort of role with the band in regard, like in addition to like being a songwriter and everything. But like our band is self-managed, so I handle all that type of stuff. In terms of like producing the music of other bands, I don't know. It's not something that I've ever given a whole lot of thought to, and maybe it's because I've never been like the most confident, in terms of like what I'm very, very self-critical about the stuff that I write, and lyrically and musically, and kind of going back to what I was saying in that other question about bringing demos to the band sooner on this record. Like that's a new thing for me. It would, in previous records I would be like just really in my own head and like beating these ideas to death until I was like, okay, I feel like it's where it needs to be, and now I can show it to people. You know what I mean? So I think it would take a lot of reconfiguring how I approach my own creative
Yeah.
process.
So another person worth mentioning in regard to this record is Andy Hull from Manchester Orchestra, and he sang on the title track, I believe. So how did you two initially connect, and how did this particular collaboration come about?
So we did a tour with Manchester Orchestra in 2017, and it was like the most fun we've ever had on a tour. And we hit it off with them really quick, and would hang out before and after every show. We'd watch their set every night. It was like a band that you just could watch 30 nights in a row and never get tired of, watching them. They were very kind to us. I feel like we learned a lot from them, because they were like this massive band, and they just handle everything so gracefully, and like it's all in their own voice, and they do things the way that they want to do things. And there's still a very like DIY sort of sense about them, even for how big impact would be. So we struck up a friendship with them. We've been in touch, since the tour. And, Andy and I text and call each other from time to time. And every once in a while, like he'll send me a demo of something that maybe he's working on, or I'll send him a demo of something I'm working on. And so when I was writing the title track, he happened to text me that day, and we were talking about something, and I was like, oh, hey, by the way, I'm working on this idea, like, would love a couple of early thoughts on this. And so I sent him like a phone demo of it, and we kind of went back and forth a little bit on it. And then fast forward a few months later, we're in the studio, and we sort of, we're figuring out how to arrange the song. And I just had the idea, like, there's this lower harmony that I really want in there, but I don't want it to be my voice double doing both parts. And, he was somebody that I had this connection with this particular song with, from kind of like the day that the idea kind of came out. So I hit him up, and I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember this song, but, I have this part that I think would be perfect for your voice. And, it would be an honor if, you wanted to be a part of it. So he was really happy to do it. And we're lucky, because I think it really, it really benefits the song quite a bit.
You guys, I believe, have released 4 videos for this record. Is there going to be a 5th, or are we done at 4?
So we were actually only supposed to do 3, and we were just going to do like a lyric video for the song Lemon Mouth. And instead, Brianna took it upon herself to like send us some instructions on how to film some stuff remotely. And so she put like that, all of that video was shot on our iPhones, and she edited all of it together and made it very cohesive and made it feel like much more than just a lyric video. So through that process, through the videos for Hesitation and New Detroit, we did a lot of it ourselves. We kind of had limited resources and wanted to keep it, not as few people involved as possible because of the pandemic and everything. So when the band would get together, we would make the most of the time and try to create as much content as possible. So we enlisted the help of some of our fine friends in northeastern PA, and really DIY'd those videos, and it was really, really fun to do. So there's not going to be, at this time, there's no plans for any additional music videos, but we are planning to do a full album playthrough of the songs in lieu of like a album release show sort of thing. So and that's going to come out I think on release day.
Where I watched a little bit of you did the making of the Hesitation video, I think a 3-part kind of like a fly on the wall kind of thing. And I was trying to figure out where you guys were. Where did you guys film that Hesitation?
Oh, that was in Kingston, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
It had this Northeast PA sound to it, just like I heard crickets or something. And I'm like, it just doesn't really sound like Philly. Like, I don't know.
No. I mean, I do. I live in Philly currently, and but Northeastern PA is home. Scranton is home. Kingston, Wilkes-Barre. That's what truly feels like home to us, to the band. So whenever possible, we try to tie in the hometown as much as we can.
Yeah. Another first on this for this album is it's your first release with Hopeless Records. Mm-hmm. And if people just want to check out their roster online, it's pretty substantial. So could you tell me a little bit about the process, of Tiger's Jaw signing with Hopeless Records?
Sure. So we met some of their staff like quite a few years ago, just through mutual friends, like playing shows out in Los Angeles. And you know, we've been in touch with them, and we talked about doing records together in the past, but for whatever reason, it didn't line up. And then we ended up doing a record with Black Cement last time around. And then after that record came out, we found ourselves in a free agent sort of position again. And you know, we started chatting with Hopeless again and a couple other labels, and just felt like a really good partnership. Like they were very understanding about where we were at as a band, and you know, the things that we still have yet to accomplish and kind of what our goals are. And they have a really sort of like lean and robust small team that functions with the strength of like a major, you know. So they're really, really good at what they do, and it's you know, it's been a really great experience so far working with them. So they really care about the record. They want it to do really well. They, you know, they want the best for us, and they are very supportive of our creative process and very respectful of that too. So it's been a great relationship.
So there's been some great press already on the album, which is, you know, always a good thing. And I have to look down at my notes because there's so many. Spin, New York Times, which I'm sure is a huge honor, Pitchfork, Stereo Gum. Yeah. So that's all fantastic. Now, does that add a little more pressure when you know, it's not just your fans that are paying attention, like kind of that world is paying attention, especially when, you know, you're on, I think, Alternative Press and maybe Stereo Gum's most anticipated albums list. So like, is there any sort of anxiety knowing that people are kind of waiting with the critical ear?
You know, I think that because I love this record so much and believe in it so much, you know, I stand behind it regardless of what any press would say. And you know, all press is good press. So, you know, I'm hoping that people really take to it and really, really like it. But the most important part was, you know, we made the record the way we wanted to make it. And we actually recorded it. We wrote and recorded it before we had even signed any deals. So it was fully just the way we wanted to do it. And, you know, we had very full creative freedom over that. So first and foremost, before we even start thinking about press or any sort of reaction to it, like we made this thing that we're really proud of. And, you know, we put it out in the world and kind of see what happens. But it's been really encouraging so far, seeing how the press has reacted.
Yeah.
But if you're aiming for that, then I think that's when you kind of lose sight of what's important about creating the art.
Right. So the overall trend in pretty much every genre has been going away from albums and more toward EPs, whether it's budget or the attention span of listeners thinking they can't, you know, immerse themselves in a 10-song, you know, release, or 12 or 14, whatever it is. But, you know, it seems like Tiger's Jaw really is, you know, all in with that album format. You know, what are your what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. You know, we've, over the course of our career, we've always been, you know, we're music fans first and foremost. And, you know, maybe in a little bit of the old school sense, like we put a lot of stock into the sequencing of a record, and, you know, how it starts and how it moves through the whole thing. And, you know, like we, for this record, we tracked 16 songs and finished 15 of them, and kind of whittled it down to what we thought was like the most cohesive album. We released one of the songs not on the album, I think spring of last year, and that was sort of to announce the signing with Hopeless and to sort of kick off the new chapter of the band. And then we decided on these 11 songs for the full length. And then there's a couple other songs that we're going to put out as an EP way down the line. But yeah, we always think of it in terms of like, you know, we want that sort of old school listener to put on the record, hear how it starts, you know, feel sort of like the movement of the energy of the tracks from, you know, in the sequence that we put a lot of time and effort into, like really thinking about this is the most impactful way to experience this record from start to finish. So I think you're always sort of going against what the current trends are and like how you think the most people can discover your music. So I think maybe it was a little bit of a compromise where we did sort of a long rollout for this record, and that also had to do with not really being able to tour and just kind of spreading things out and creating more content like music videos and stuff. But in releasing 4 singles over the course of the 4.5 months before the record, kind of allowed everybody a little bit more time to have that sort of like, here's a single and spend just that. you People's attention spans definitely keep getting shorter and shorter, but you know I hope people do put the record on from start to finish and get that full experience.
Is this the deal with Hopeless? Is it for a certain amount of time or a certain amount of releases?
Yeah, every deal gets structured a little bit differently, but as of right now, we'll definitely be doing, whatever happens next, we'll be doing our next record with them as well. And, beyond that, we'll see how it goes. But like I said, we've really had a great experience with them so far. So yeah, I can see us working together again.
Kind of at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned, in lieu of a traditional album release show, you're going to be doing like a playthrough event. Could you tell us a little more about that?
Sure. So, when before the pandemic kind of shut down the live music industry, we were planning on doing like a release week where we would do like an acoustic in-store at a record store, and then do like a secret small venue show that gets announced day of, where we would play the album from front to back. We would maybe do one in the Scranton Wilkes-Barre area, maybe do one in New York, maybe do one in Boston or something like that, all around release day. That was our big plan. Obviously it can't happen. So sort of as a compromise for that, we are doing virtual in-stores for all of like the exclusive vinyl variant, like the retailers. So there's one for Gallery of Sound in Wilkes-Barre. So if you pre-order the record through Gallery of Sound, then you get access to this, it's like a Zoom virtual in-store where we'll perform a couple songs acoustic and then also do like a moderated Q&A. So we're doing those for the retailers. There's Newberry Comics, there's Banquet Records, there's Zia Records, and Smart Punk. So we're doing one for each of those retailers. And then it hasn't been announced yet, but like I mentioned, we're doing the full album playthrough. So it's not a traditional live stream, but it is a live performance of the record that's pre-filmed that we're going to premiere on the night of the release. And I think there's going to be a chat room component, and we'll be hanging out in the chat room and for Q&As and stuff like that. So
I mean, that's really cool. And I mean, I've talked to some other people about this, but the old cliche that necessity is the mother of invention. And like the pandemic has really, I mean, who even heard of Zoom, a year or so ago? I mean, it's really, I don't know. It seems like it's brought out different types of creativity from people, from like a planning standpoint or, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's definitely, you got to, I guess, make the best of the situation you're in, and so it's definitely not how we would ideally want to release an album, but we're making the most of it. We're putting ourselves out there, and we're having as much fun with it as like we always have a great time when we're together doing shows or whatever. So anytime we get to have the band in one place hanging out is a great thing. So we kind of live, we're a little bit scattered. Teddy lives in the Detroit area, Colin and Bree are in northeastern PA, I'm down in Philly. So with the pandemic, it was the time that we got to spend together over the last year has been few and far between. So so when we have been able to get together, it's been really, really great. So we're looking forward to eventually being able to get on the road again.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, all this stuff is, that's uh, all we can do for now. So
You mentioned, the band being self-managed. Has it been like that through the entire history of the band, or have you had management at one point or another?
no, never had management. We've, the first couple years of the band, it was a really sort of part-time thing. And, a couple years in, we hired a booking agent. Um, but yeah, like I guess we never, we always just wanted to know how to do everything, ourselves, and know that, we weren't being taken advantage of or anything like that by somebody like promising us this or that. And there's great managers out there. I'm friends with many of them, but we've just kind of always done this band in a way that felt natural and felt authentic to us, and kind of like making it a self-propelled thing has been the most fulfilling way to do it. So for as much as we can kind of like keep that sort of DIY spirit, like we do that.
Yeah, and it definitely, I think comes across, and it's been really cool. I mean, I remember, I think the first time I saw Tiger's Jaw was at Molly Brannigan's was the name of the place. You guys, I'm
Oh
sure,
yeah.
were in high school. It was for like a showcase thing. And just to see
Yep.
that, and then a few years ago, Terminal 5 with Manchester Orchestra. But, as things grew, certain things didn't change, which is cool. And like, that's not always the case. Sometimes you see people change, or the business thing gets a little weird. But as things have grown, and you talk about some of these live stream events and everything you're working on, do you find yourself spending more time on the non-musical side of things now than you would have 5 years or so ago, or more than you'd
Yeah,
care
I guess
to?
so. You know, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago when we, made the transition to being like a full-time band. So there is a lot more, kind of like the day-to-day answering emails, doing the kind of like logistics stuff, like managing the finances and everything like that. But it all that stuff is worth it, because we know how the band, we know the ins and outs of the band, and we can kind of retain that control over it, and make sure that it's not about the business side of it, that it's about the the creative side, and it's about making music and going on tour together and stuff like that. So keeping those priorities straight has really kind of helped us to have the career that we've had, and hopefully we'll continue to have for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if a story like the Tiger Jaw story could have happened even in the '90s, because when you look at, I mean, I don't know, it'd be interesting to get like a list of who in 1997 or whatever played venues the size of Terminal 5, across the country, and how many didn't have management, and how
Right.
many were on an independent label. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know. It's
Well, I
just,
think I think the way that the industry has changed a little bit is sometimes people say that, like, oh, if you're in a band and you're starting out, like, you got to get your booking agent and your manager and your record label, and that's not necessarily the case. Uh, we would, when we started off, we were booking our own shows through MySpace. We were flyering all over Scranton. We were doing show trades with people in Wilkes-Barre and Tamaqua and wherever. And it was very, very self-propelled, and it was about creating that sort of music scene, and it led us to friendships with Title Fight and the Menzingers and Captain We're Sinking. Led us to playing further and further outside of our bubble in Scranton. So all that stuff is like, it's really important to kind of have those formative early experiences, and not feel like you need to like have this person telling you what to do or whatever. So there's nothing wrong with working with labels and working with managers and all that, but it's really important to have those formative experiences and really get a sense of like who you are as a band and what things are important to you as a band. And I think that sort of like foundation comes from trying and failing a few times by yourself, and kind of having those early tour experiences where no one's at the shows and you're like, all right, well, let's figure out why, and let's figure out how to keep expanding our network and meeting new bands and figuring out how to like cultivate like a local scene and expand that outward.
I was thinking about how, I talked about that Molly Brannigan's show, and you guys are, in high school. So the Tiger's Jaw has been part of your life for probably half or more than half of your life, I would guess, right?
Yeah, we just surpassed the 15-year mark, and I just turned 31 a few weeks back. So yeah, just about half my life.
All right, well, happy birthday, belated. And is it, as great as that is and as cool as that is there like anything surreal or weird about, maybe singing a song that you wrote when you were a teenager? I mean, sometimes we look at pictures of ourselves even in high school and like, that looks like a different person to me. Is there any like disconnect or just amusement or anything with that sort of thing?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing, but I think that the songs that I wrote back then came from a genuine place. So I think I can, at the most basic level, at least connect with that part of it, even if it was like a different version of me, but that's bound to happen. Time goes by, and you kind of think about older songs differently, and your life is maybe in a completely different place. But yeah, I think that I don't know, like I've never felt like a complete disconnect or anything from the old songs, but yeah, it is definitely surreal sometimes to think about, like, when we do play live shows and have a couple of the very old songs in the set, where it's like, wow, this song has really had quite a journey with us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say surreal is a good way to describe that.
It's probably it's very similar experience for some of the fans too that have been around, from the beginning.
Definitely.
Years ago, I remember doing an interview with you. I think we were at the Bog, and I was asking you about different influences. And it stands out to me that you mentioned Tom Petty. I just really remember that. And I was thinking about that today because I was looking through the bio for this upcoming album, and it mentions one of your top influences being Gin Blossoms. That stood out to me too. What's the deal there?
I don't know specifically where the Gin Blossoms thing came in. I love I love 90s music. I remember becoming aware of like rock music on the radio kind of probably right around that time when Gin Blossom songs were on the radio, and whatever else, like Goo Goo Dolls, Third Eye Blind, that type of stuff. So I've always had sort of a soft spot for that type of music, and there's just something really good and simplistic and like kind of timeless about those songs. Sort of in a similar way as like how I think about Tom Petty songs. Like they're not overthought. They're very simple. They're very direct, and like they just have this sort of timelessness about them. So yeah, I would say like kind of like the early formative years of listening to I don't know, becoming aware of like guitar rock music on the radio kind of led me to a lot of those bands.
Yeah. There was a show in the 90s that I'm old enough to have been there at Montage in Scranton, and it was Spin Doctors, Gin Blossoms, Cracker, and Filter. And
amazing.
I mean, that's
a great one.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
a couple years back, I got to see, it was who was it? Fastball, Gin Blossoms, Sugar Ray, Vertical Horizon, and Smash Mouth.
Wow.
That was like probably 7 years ago I saw that one.
Yeah, I mean,
Pretty
90s are kind of classic now, and it's just weird to think about, Eddie Vedder in his 50s and like,
Yeah,
It's just
still killing it though.
It's weird. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely. It's just yeah. That's what happens. People get older. I mean, we think of '80s bands, '90s bands, but they didn't get together and say, let's start a '90s band.
Right. No,
It's
yeah.
just
They were just
becomes known
starting a
that.
band.
Yeah. So before we wrap up, I wanted to ask about Hello Donuts. So what is Hello Donuts?
So a few years back, just out of the spirit of touring and the connection of like food and coffee culture to like music and touring culture, uh, when you travel around, you kind of find your spots in the different cities that you play regularly, and there's sort of a kinship between like the world of food and the world of music. So kind of largely inspired by a lot of the kind of boutique donut and coffee shops around the country. We got the idea to do something like that in Philadelphia, and there's already a couple of really great donut shops and plenty of great coffee shops in the city, but some of the more some of the bigger ones. One of them is Federal Donuts, which is fried chicken and donuts. The other one is Dottie's Donuts, which is all vegan. So both of them cater to a very specific, demographic. And we wanted to do something that was a little bit more up the middle, where we would have boutique, coffee and donuts, but have some of them be sort of traditional style donuts, and then some of them be vegan as well. So sort of a something for everybody kind of idea. And we partnered up with a really great coffee company called Reanimator, who have a couple of their own shops around the city, and put out the call and found some really, really talented bakers and developed some great recipes. And so yeah, we opened up in August of 2019. It was the same month that we were doing we were in the studio doing this record. We were like battling with the city to get all these all the permits and everything to be able to open up, and it just so happened that all of it came together in the exact time frame that I was in the studio. So it was a very, very hectic couple of weeks there. But yeah, we opened up the shop, and we're open for about half a year, and then the pandemic happened. So we've had a whole bunch of new challenges to navigate because of that. But luckily, we've been able to be open at least part of the time for takeout on weekends, Friday through Sunday. So you can follow along. We've social media. It's Hello Donuts PHL on Instagram, and yeah, it's been a really fun but very challenging endeavor.
What's your favorite donut there?
I don't know. Anytime we do a version of like there's like a peanut butter and jelly donut, which our head baker has a really great like a peanut butter pastry cream as the filling, and then there's the fruit topping on top. That's probably one of my favorites. But we change the menu around basically every single weekend, so there's quite a few flavors, and we do a lot of great cake donuts as well. There's like an old fashioned donut, which is with a little bit of whiskey in the glaze and some orange. So it's sort of like an homage to the cocktail.
Yeah.
We've got a really creative group there, so we do a lot of really cool flavors.
Yeah, those all sound really, really good right about now.
Yeah.
Ben, we covered, I think a lot of material here. The album's coming out. Just to remind everyone, I Won't Care How You Remember Me. It comes out March 5th. And, people could stay tuned for information about the playthrough. And there's a lot of other cool things you mentioned. Before I let you go today, is there anything else you wanted to mention about the record, or, anything at all, really?
I'm just really grateful that we've, been able to do this for so long. And I'm really proud of this record. I think it's a really important record for me and for our band. And, I'm grateful for people like you that have been there since the beginning, and supporting our band. So I appreciate your time, Mike.
You're welcome. It's been really, really neat to watch, the progression of the band, and there, there's a lot of bands that were really good and just didn't last for whatever reason, but it's been cool to watch, the thing just progress. I remember one of my jobs in New York a few years ago, I went over to this guy that I was kind of manager of like 3 people, and he had his headphones on, and I said, "Oh, what are you listening to?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm just listening to some, different Scranton bands." And this guy is from New Jersey. He went to Seton Hall. I said, "Wait, people say that? Like Scranton?" I said, "Wait a minute." And I sat down and started going on about, like, he's like, "The guys from Tigers?" I'm like, "Well, yeah, a little bit." And he's like, "Well, wait a minute. Isn't Title Fight from like Kingston? Where's Kingston?" And I'm like, I was like, "Well,
yeah,
I could tell you all about this if you really want to know."
It's such a special little corner in the world, there's so many talented people that came up in that area, and I feel really lucky to kind of grown in that, and been able to contribute to it as well. So it's definitely a really special place.
Definitely. All right. Well, thanks again, Ben. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike.
All right. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.